Welcome back.
That was it? Like,
that's sound direction.
You told me that you were going to start out... Oh, well, now you are doing a voice because you sound like a robot. Unfortunately, the audience isn't going to hear this, but I want them to know. While we were recording,
Beep,
Ethan
boop.
lost internet for a second. It sounded like a robot.
I always sound like a robot. It's because I am.
Oh my god.
you heard it here, guys. I'm a sex robot, actually.
And that's actually the final episode of the season. I wonder what's going to happen next season on Style and Direction after this big cliffhanger that Ethan has been a robot this whole time.
What if I was replaced by a robot? That's even bigger of a...
That's right. Twist. Every single episode of this podcast up until this point has been season 1. And if you listen closely, there's been a underlying subplot about Ethan being a robot.
Yeah, that's right. Go back and listen to the little Easter eggs we placed for you. It's kind of like
if you play our podcast forwards and backwards at the same time, you'll see a hidden message up there.
We're not going to tell you what it is. You'll
see the message in the podcast.
Yeah. You play at the same time, and then your eyes will reveal it to you.
Yep.
This is not how I wanted my voice to go.
Okay, how did you want your voice to go?
I was going for
let's rewind, and then we'll start over.
Hey guys, you're listening to Style and Direction, a menswear podcast without the stuffiness. I can even
sounds like you're Will Arnett. It sounds like you're Will Arnett a little bit. Are
you
trying to do Are you trying to do like a radio DJ?
Yeah.
Like Howlin' Wolf or whatever?
I don't even know who that is.
I might be getting Wolfman Jack. Howlin' Wolf is another guy. Wolfman Jack was radio DJ.
I don't know who either.
He's in American Graffiti.
I've never seen American Graffiti.
Oh, okay. Well, he was also a real radio DJ. So if you know about radio DJs, then you know him.
Unfortunately, I don't know anyone. I don't know anything about radios nor about Don Jackson.
Don Jackson?
DJ.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I should have said don't join. Actually,
don't join. If you said don't join, I would have gotten it.
I mean, I thought it was clear that Actually,
we're the only menswear podcast that talks about the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, take that, blammo. And the next thing you know, Jeremy Cookman's going to be like, by the way, Michael Hill, what did you think of Rey Skywalker? And then Michael Hill will say, it wasn't for me. What's happening to my voice? Hold on.
Oh, the voice that you were doing, it's taken over.
That's the real twist. I've been taken over by Will Arnett, guys.
So this is another choose your adventure.
Yeah.
Is Ethan a robot or is he taken over by Will Arnett? You fast forward to 34:23 if you want him to be taken over by Will Arnett, and fast forward to 12:16 if you want to.
We're gonna find that Romano guy.
Robot. There you go.
What's another? We referenced that joke in the last one.
Did we? I mean, then it's just a running gag. Very Arrested Development. You know.
That's right. I would say so. Look at the blouse, sir. That's one of my favorite lines. I mean, it's kind of an early one, but I guess I've seen the first episode a lot because I've had a couple of dates where I try and show a girl that, and either she leaves immediately or you have sex. It's either one of those two options. And so I've heard that initial joke with Tobias a lot.
I just like his line reading when, like, in the second episode where he's talking about being an actor, and then Lindsay said it's like you haven't had one audition, and he goes, well, excuse me, and then there's a beat, and he says, excuse me, and then just runs away. And I always love how he delivers that line. Yeah,
it's a good one. I actually think, Spencer, your little pop filter is hitting the mic a little bit. You want to move that back a little bit, or I hear it like jiggling.
I'll do my best. I need to like tighten my mic stand somehow, because it never stays exactly where I want it, and that's a little peek behind the curtain.
And where do you want it?
I want it not like closer to my mouth.
I thought you were gonna say like I want it in my butt or something. I don't know.
No, I was saying, why would I want a microphone there? It's not going to pick up what I'm saying.
Maybe it's not there to pick up what you're saying.
Okay, but we're doing a podcast, Ethan. I mean, why did
Oh, I'm sorry.
the podcast paid for
I
this?
got this
Technically, I don't want
confused
to use it.
with our little side project ass sounds.
Yeah, Neil Cicerega, move out of the way.
That's right.
Forget about mouth sounds. We got ass sounds.
But anyway, guys, you're listening to Style and Direction, the menswear podcast. My name is Ethan M. Wong.
I'm Spencer. No last name necessary.
No. And we are here to talk to you about menswear topics. I did that last time. I'm trying to make a cooler introduction, for 2021.
Let me brainstorm something. You could be like the topic. No, you can't just start with the topic for that. Well, you gotta. I don't know. It was just the problem is I put pressure on myself to come up with something good, and then I blanked.
Oh my god, this is great. I love
How
it.
do I mean? We got to do like the Doughboys way of doing it, where like you write like a really long introduction that begins with something just like really tangentially related to the topic at hand, and then like a couple paragraphs in, then you're like, oh, okay, I see why they're talking about this now. I see how it ties in.
Ties in. Let's talk about ties. Just kidding. We're not.
Let's talk about Tarzan.
That's right, Clayton. No, I was gonna say, speaking about ties, and technically that's not incorrect because we will talk about ties later on today.
Indeed.
The topic of today is initially it was gonna be like lessons we learned from being into vintage, but I think I also like the title, which is probably what it is. Don't know it because I read the title like minutes before it goes live. That's kind of half true, but I think it's having a POV in menswear, having a personal style guide your aesthetic. I don't know. One of those things is going to be the title. Don't know. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about having a POV, having a personal style. And I think it's super important. I think that's kind of
PIV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. God damn it. But I think, that's kind of where this conversation happened, because Spencer and I, we've kind of teased in earlier episodes where we say we've been like poisoned by being into vintage menswear, specifically like 1930s and 40s tailoring, 60s ivy.
Because we're the only ones that complain about sweaters being too long and jackets being too long and like breast pockets being too small and shit like that.
Yeah.
Mostly because when we first started buying clothing and first started getting interested in clothing, it was all like 70 years old.
That's right.
And so we grew up in like the style rules of 70 years ago, kind of.
And I wouldn't even say style rules. I think that because these things aren't style rules, it's more like an aesthetic of an era. And
That's true, yeah.
When we were getting into it, one of the biggest things about getting into vintage is to make sure you're buying the correct era, and this is kind of something we've referenced before. We talked about this kind of in like our third episode with like Dapper Day or whatever, but it's important to know like when we or let me just say, I never liked it when people said, oh, Ethan dresses vintage, like even early on, because that's kind of like a half truth, because I'm not going to the thrift store and buying like an 80s tweed jacket. Could be Harris tweed, but I wouldn't wear it because it's not 30s, right? And I think that it's more important to say, okay, Ethan is taking cues, or at least, okay, early on, Ethan is dressing in 1930s golden era age tailoring. That's more of like a specific thing. It could just be because a lot of people just, people don't care about that shit.
Because that's a little bit more of a mouthful.
Yeah. So obviously, like, I mean, like, yeah, you could say I'm into vintage, but like, I think early on it confused certain people because they'd be like, oh, hey, I saw this old photograph of my grandparents. Do you like it? And it's like a guy wearing a fucking like Windsor knot with like I don't know, like low waisted or like bell bottoms. And maybe I'd be into that now. Maybe not the tie, but it's like that's not it, right? And I think a lot of people don't really get that point of view, because there's a lot of reasons why I think it's important to have it. And I can't imagine not having it because that's what guided Spencer and I's personal style. Right, like we were never into like just looking good or looking stylish. Like that was like not.
We were never interested in looking good.
I mean, we picked 30s and 40s. I think we kind of knew that we weren't gonna be the coolest guys out there.
We weren't gonna be cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of it's important to have that point of view because we weren't interested in just like wearing a suit because I mean, maybe I was. Spencer, I will have a different story. He's mentioned it in our old Ethan, old Spencer essay, or sorry, podcast. But for me, initially, before getting to vintage, it was like, oh, I gotta be dapper. I gotta be like hashtag menswear, you know. And I think the first time I ever heard about like having a POV is like the cut of suit that you buy, right? Like, oh, and I'm sure you've seen it, like the that like Tumblr image that's supposed to be for illustration, but people use it for everything, where it's like Italian versus English versus American suits, right? And those are all things where like guys on YouTube would be like, oh, I'm a big fan of Italian suits, and they would say, like, a guy might comment, why Italian suits? Like, oh, because of the shoulder. I actually don't. Maybe I'll include it in the show notes. I'm pretty sure a lot of that stuff is like outdated. Especially
yeah. I mean, it's like I also think that the artist in question like did
shit.
like a Fallout like fan comic, which was of course set in like a kind of 50s world. So it was already the
Far
advice that she
removed.
was given was already like old advice that people just assume is true.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like that was like a first thing of like differentiating between different aesthetics, right? And I think even then, right, people would say like, oh yeah, I prefer wearing, maybe not Tom Ford, I don't know, maybe Edward Sexton. I can't remember the first time I ever heard that name. But the people are like, oh, I'd rather wear like Armani, or something like that, right? And
Yeah.
of course, at the time, I didn't really think about that much until I got into vintage menswear. And it's just, immediately, I already knew it was going to be way different than shopping at H&M. Like, not just, it's also, like, not just about the lapels, but I mean, that was, like, a big thing, right? Like, oh, the lapels are wider, the jackets are longer, the pants sit higher on your waist, they're also wider, And
For me, it was like the real difference was just how sturdy the cloth, like how much heavier the cloth was on vintage things. And obviously now I'm like, okay, I don't need it all to be that heavy. It's kind of impractical in Southern California.
But compared to before,
But
like whatever's in the mall.
I mean, it's really incredible. Like, just, I don't know. Like I said, it just feels like vintage suits feel so much sturdier than most stuff that you would find like today.
So
maybe not from the higher end brands, but it definitely from the stuff that I was seeing in like middle school and high school.
was that the reason you got into it?
Not really. It wasn't because of that, but it was one of the things that I kind of like picked up on and really liked. I mean, yeah, I don't think like it was. Yeah, it was definitely not something that was like I want to get into vintage because the clothes are better made. That was never
Right. Because
the reason why.
From what I remember, right, you don't
But yeah.
you don't have like a hashtag menswear phase. You were kind of always into that kind of, at the very least, like vintage casual kind of heritage kind of
Yeah.
look. And did you know? I mean, that's also something we can talk about later on too. But that's also an aesthetic that was like different than like modern casual wear. Like the idea of wearing like a gray crew neck with like a selvage jean and boots. Like, I mean, I've seen you wear that with like a sports shirt or whatever, But like clearly there was like a defining thing where like I'm going after this aesthetic and not just being casual in general.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's like, going back to classic menswear and suits. I mean, yeah, I think. I mean, this is obviously more the case if you're not interested in fashion, but I think for a lot of people, just like a suit is a suit, and it's like there's no one person wearing a suit looks exactly the same as any other person wearing a suit. They don't really. A lot of people just don't really see the like style differences.
Yeah, no, I actually remember this like way early on. This was like 2015, 2016. I remember I went to Washington, D.C. to hang out with my cousin who was in DC. And I remember like this was like very early on. I was buying vintage suits. I don't know if you listen to the podcast, but her husband was. We were talking about like what suits I was into, and he goes like, if I could like distill into one word of what I was in, and I told him like, okay, it's kind of like 30s inspired or whatever, and I think I said like I just don't want to look like a politician, right? And he was like, but you do look like one. And I like you said, like regular people just don't see it, right? Like there's a picture of me wearing like, yeah, like in my head, even Donald Trump doesn't matter, Obama, who doesn't matter, but like in my head, politician, like blue suit, white shirt, red tie, right? And at the time, there was a picture of me wearing my 1940s single-breasted blue suit wearing it with like a white spear point, maybe there was a stripe, and then like a red foulard tie. And at the time, I was like, I mean, I get what you're trying to say, but like there has to be like the politicians don't have trousers that break like that, you know. Like, yeah, they might be like baggy, but they're not like clean, you know. They don't have the quarters. And I think, you know, this is just me, and we talked about this with the influencer one about being, you know, very niche. But I was like, there's gotta be a way for people to understand that this is different. Like, it is like a part of my mission to be like to wear a suit, but to not like look like it, right? Like look like your regular.
So your
guy.
whole thing was based on that one conversation.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I want to write thousands of words about why these lapels are way different. You know,
Yeah.
but it's true. I mean, that's why I got into vintage, because it was, or did I say this in the original? I don't remember, but like, remember I said that I saw a guy wearing like a DB suit at Dapper Day, Josh Schmar, right? Like the guy that went to your high school, and it was like I knew, even before I knew it was vintage, I was like, that suit. First off, I don't see double-breasted suits very often, but that suit has this look to it that is so radically different. It doesn't even look like what I've seen on like Frasier. It doesn't look on anything. It has like horizontal peak lapels, but they're like lower. The buttons are so much like wider, like horizontally. You know, I was like, this is crazy, right? And of course, you know, I later found out he was wearing actual vintage. But as we know now, right, like there are a couple of makers that make it in that way. Like Bryceland's has a suit similar to that. WW Chan has done a suit like that for Alan C and everything. So yeah, for me it was like, okay, yes, being into any variation of classic menswear or suits is already going to be overdressed, but it was like, at least then it will look different. And in my head, there's got to be a way for you to look like, for people to understand.
Because as we've said before, you can kind of make the case that it's like, you know, hey, when most people were wearing suits or sport coats or just, you know, ties every day.
Yeah.
There was a lot more variation and things that made it more quote unquote casual and everyday wear that you just don't see anymore. But because you don't see that anymore, most people just see you wearing a suit.
Yeah,
and you can't be like, wait, but this thing has like pleated patch pockets, and you know, I'm wearing a like button down collar and stuff like that. It's casual. It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, so like, to me, it was already like, I knew early on, like we said, being into classic or vintage menswear, it's already going to be ridiculous. Like, there's just like, that's, if my goal was to look cool, this was not the way to get there, you know. But
there is like there's a lot of debate, you know, about like, is vintage menswear a costume?
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, kind of a little bit, but it's at the same time, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just because that's, you know, I was into vintage menswear. I don't want to be like, no, that's not a costume.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess what I was going to say is that, like, if you're going to be into classic menswear, like, you might as well have a point of view, because it's already just kind of like a weird thing to be into, even if like, because you're already going to be lumped into that guy wearing express suits to impress women with an undercut kind of thing. You know, like you're already in that group, at least from a mainstream perspective, right? So,
and, well, I think it's important, as like, if you want to be a stylish person, you have to kind of set yourself apart somehow. And I mean, that's like my opinion with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Is it's like, when you're putting something out there, you want to make sure that it's like, it's worth it. It's worth it for other people to hear your point of view or whatever. So if you're trying to promote yourself as like a stylish guy on Instagram, or even just dress well, you should try to make something about your way of dressing totally unique to you.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think some of the things that we talk about in the Discord, which, plug, if you are a patron, you should already be in it, and if you're not, join the Patreon. But we've had a lot of discussion over what is correct or what is the right choice for something. And that usually comes, you know, there's a couple of people, there's a variety in the Discord, right? There are guys who are like vintage, there are guys who like really quirky Ivy stuff, there are guys who wear like more traditional or more, quote, normal cuts of things, right? And that's always going to be debate with classic menswear. But I don't really think anything is like correct. Maybe something might look more normal, but what is right, I think, is definitely dependent on the wearer, and that comes with having a point of view, you know. And if you don't have one, not saying that no one on our Discord doesn't have it, but like in general, like if you don't have one, it kind of makes you lose that argument in a sense, right? Like, because otherwise you would just wear whatever is the most right thing for it. Like you might even, I mean, I'm extrapolating, maybe it's like a Chewbacca argument kind of thing, but it's like, oh, why even wear a fuller tie at all, right? Like, you would be better off wearing a black knit tie or like a black grenadine, you know. And I don't want to go down that road, because if you go down that road, then you're just like, you're losing everything, right? And it goes the same thing with like details on like jeans, right? Because like, oh, well, a wide leg doesn't fit your leg properly, doesn't shape your leg. Well, that's not always the point. You know, sometimes you just like to do it just because, you know.
And that, I mean, yeah, that is something interesting, because it's like, obviously we talk so much about how important fit is, but also we like to subvert fits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like you know, I mean, it's like, you know, like you said, you could technically go to a couple bespoke tailors and get like an average, what they think will be the most flattering cut on you. But maybe if the most flattering cut has, you know, like heavy shoulder padding or no shoulder padding, but you want different shoulders, that's gonna suck, you know.
Yeah.
You're gonna want to look how you want to look.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that's kind of the most important thing, and hopefully, I don't know, I don't know what the reach of this podcast is, but it's my hope that you guys listen to it and understand, like, yeah, you can, you know, dive deep into what you like. Because that's what happened for me and Spencer, and that's and still, even now, where we wear a lot more modern stuff, where we, you know, maybe Spencer doesn't even wear tailoring as much anymore, but even then, when we're looking at it, we're like, oh, that's not that 30s or whatever, you know. And a lot of people don't have that. I mean, maybe other than like Ivan or like a couple of people who also like collect vintage and are kind of moving in a classic menswear direction, but you know, it's important for our basis of personal style, and it's fun to kind of creatively see what you can get away with or pull inspiration from or recontextualize, you know, because
I mean, I don't know, I always like having like a wide base of like inspiration or things to pull from, like for everything, you know, like, I don't know, like all my playlists on Spotify like have stuff, I have like fucking like old ass stuff from the 40s and 50s, and then stuff from the 2010s on there or whatever. I like having a lot to be able to pull from, like, you know, just find the stuff that I like.
Yeah. No, I think that kind of reminds me of like my taste in music too, I think. I mean, you guys know that I love listening to film score a lot, and this idea of like being able to like, it sounds niche, like I'm sure if you know, like Spencer, like you said, like if you're talking about being into vintage menswear, people might think, oh, that's it, but then there's a lot within vintage menswear to pull from, right? There's a lot of like Milser workwear, even variations thereof. A lot of, I mean, even in the 30s, there was a lot of different jeans, right? There's a lot of different like work shirts, and I mean, we've seen it. Like,
and I mean, we've talked about like in the Discord and stuff like that, the influence you can get from like European menswear in the 30s and how it was different than American menswear, stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think so, like with the music taste, and this might be a tease for our future episode on like how music and menswear mix and composer style and everything. Like a lot of people assume, oh, I just like orchestral film scores. Like people just assume like that's just what I'm into. But I have, as Spencer and MJ know, I have a very like, not narrow, but like I have my favorite composers and composing style. And even within there, like even if I say John Williams, like John Williams has composed like jazz scores before. He's done like an Asian centric thing for like Memoirs of a Geisha, and he's done like Star Wars, Indiana Jones. So there is still, like, for me, it sounds like I have a very narrow point of view, but in fact there's still a lot to kind of pull from. And even this has also happened today where our friend Raymond Chu from Drama Department.
Everybody loves him.
Yeah. Deborah. Somebody feed Phil.
We got to get him to do that.
Yeah, he better. But you know, he was saying, like, he was looking at he said, you know, I was bored. I was reading your blog. Also, thank you for being bored and reading my blog. I'm glad that I get to entertain with all my words. But he said, like, you know, when you look at it from like a very broad point of view, I'm actually a lot less experimental than other people think. But I think it's because, like I said, with my 30s point of view, I'm wearing like spear point collars and like shorter ties and wide leg pants. To some people, that's fucking crazy, right? But then in reality, like, I'm not wearing like patchwork pants. I'm not wearing like engineered garments. I mean, I like those things.
You've mostly like stuck to, I mean, the fit of your suits has obviously changed
like slightly
in the past couple years, but I mean, for the most part, you're still using the same ideas that you were 3-4 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's because it's been such a guiding force, and a lot of people make fun of like, oh, well, you make fun of yourself before. What are you gonna do in 10 years? I'm like, I feel like that like, it's but plateaued where now I can experiment within that area, but it's still got some of the same ideas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's important to have the point of view because like maybe it's just me, but I don't like liking a lot of things. And I mean that like in the broad sense. Like I don't like every Taylor. I think it's pretty clear that I'm not a big fan of like Cifanelli stuff, right? Like that's not. I mean, not that I don't like him. I'm just saying like I wouldn't wear that type of suit. Same thing with like Edward Sexton.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would, even though I'm into like the 70s now or I have more appreciation for it. I don't think that I would be able to pull it off because it's kind of weird. But 1930s collegiate looks are very close to like Edward Sexton stuff. There is that kind of leeway for those looks.
And when you kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to when you go in with like a point of view or kind of like figure out what you like. I mean, that has saved me so much money just being like more picky about like about the clothes that I buy.
Absolutely.
It's so nice to be able to like go into a mall and like try on a cool jacket and be like, well, I can't buy it because it's too long or whatever, and just like call it at that.
Yeah.
That's really, and that's something. I mean, it's like obviously that I've had some things that I've bought and then like maybe regretted later, but a lot less than I think if I had just gone into fashion, menswear, whatever, completely blind, and not like I'm going to try to get into like vintage menswear.
Yeah, that's absolutely true because I remember like again before I started collecting vintage, I would like go to H&M and again I had no idea what else there was because I just assumed there was no way for me to like to get anything else, right? Like I mean I this is a little topic, but like imagine being in 2010 #menswear, being in like going to college and well not maybe not 2010 maybe like 2014 or whatever, and like being into #menswear, you don't even know what male fashion advice is, you don't even use eBay for anything. All you have is like your local H&M and like fucking like downtown Riverside, not a fashion capital of the world in the slightest.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I want to wear suits, right? So basically for me at the time, it was like everything that I wanted, like everything that I could wear came from H&M. So you would go all the time and see what's new in the suiting department. So I've had stuff that was like it was cool in window pane, right? Like I like brown checks.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one button and hacking pocket, and it's like, well, I assume I like it, and if I just had that like point of view, like, oh, even if I only had H&M or just J Crew, it would be like, well, that particular model wouldn't work for me. But if I didn't have it, it's like nothing is really stopping you. I don't have taste, and yeah, there's a lot of things like that, I think because I see it a lot. Maybe not in our Discord, but like in general, where like a guy's like, oh, I gotta get into Gurkhas because that's new. I gotta get into a bunch of stuff because you just kind of see it. And that's, I think this is, I mean, we talk about permanent style and everyone else and people not hating on the Explore page, but maybe that's why guys use the Explore page because they don't have a point of view. They just want to see what's out there, right? I mean, classically, I guess you would rely on like apparel arts magazines telling you what's in or whatever, or maybe you go into Bespoke Tailor and the sales or the cutter is like, hey, by the way, we got this new fabric and you should try it. But if you don't have that, you're in the age of internet stuff.
The age of Ultron.
Yeah. I've got no strings. I remember.
Bad Tailor.
Yeah. You got frayed ends everywhere. But like yeah, you would. I can understand why guys would just kind of like get into a whole bunch of stuff and why a lot of the blogs are about reviewing a bunch of different items, trying it. Like Permacell wrote about the mock neck and stuff like that. And I feel like for us, or at least for me, like I don't first off, I don't have to always experiment to find new content, but number two, it's like I wouldn't have tried it because I have the taste that I do, and I think that's kind of like a blessing in disguise. I don't know. Maybe you guys can leave us a comment. I'm sure the Discord will discuss this at length and have our little stream this Saturday about it.
Something I think vintage has probably also helped us out with is maybe given us like, I don't know, a better mind to like kind of categorize or like break down the details of specific
Absolutely.
styles. Because again, going into menswear blind, it can be, I mean, it's like if you're specifically with vintage menswear, again, so much of it about like making sure that you're getting the era right is about like all these tiny minute details.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which now I notice these tiny minute details on like everything,
Yeah.
and so I'm able to.
Yeah, you thought button pocket harmony was bad. Now you're gonna see everything.
But yeah, it's like when you like, for example, I've been liking kind of like old school like athletic styles
Yeah.
or like outdoor styles recently. It's really easy for me to like look at old photos or whatever and say, okay, well, this is the thing that I like about it. I like I like these colors.
Yeah.
I like how this fits, whatever. But I'm able to actually name what I like about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like swelled edges, right? I think that's kind of, and we'll spend the next half of this talking about specific vintage that we like, and we'll include pictures about it that we wherever we reference. But that is incredibly apt. I mean, for me at least, as an example, right? For it helped me describe tailoring in a way that was like eye-opening for me, and of course a lot of my friends who would be like, oh, that's why that's like a thing, right? Like because it was never about getting a suit with wide lapels, like, it's because otherwise you'd fall into the trap of like 70s, whatever, 90s. But it's like, okay, where does the buttoning point lie? What's the angle of the notch? Is it blunted or
Yeah.
not? Is it like obtuse? Is it how deep is the v is the notch cut into the lapel? Because those are things that you see on like 30s or any kind of era, because each era has like a distinct look, even though there are variations of it. But number two, like you said, like, I mean, or we wrote this in the notes, classic menswear doesn't have a lot of trends, so a lot of designers now, not just designers, bespoke tailors, whatever, will pull references of those things. So for me and Spencer,
Yeah.
it's about looking at the original, or we've been blessed to look at the original and be like, okay, that's what they're looking at, right? Like I remember
Yeah, and this is like, so this is like just a, like when I worked at J. Crew, a lot of Wallace and Barnes stuff we would get in,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, okay, so this is supposed to be like the like Civilian Conservation Corps like wool jacket with the shawl collar. But I looked at the Wallace and Barnes one, I'm like, but this one is very long, the pockets are much smaller, it doesn't, like, the fabric isn't as nice, so I don't want the copy, I want like the original thing.
Yeah, yeah. Or vice versa. Like, if you like, I mean, that's why people like buying Wallace and Barnes, and it's cool to know, like, if you are buying Wallace and Barnes, you're buying double RL or whatever, you're like, oh, that's what it is. And I think opening your eyes up to that lets you have the option of buying the reproduction or the original, which is always a good thing. Obviously we like to buy used clothing secondhand and buying vintage because, believe it or not, it still exists out there. It gets rarer every day, but it's still fun to look at. But I mean, it's really cool, and especially with like tailoring, right? Like, there are a couple of tailors out there, I think, like Sastria Serna, I think I might be getting that wrong, but it's a Spanish tailor. He has like such 30s lapels, like, it is like rounded, it is so good. But then of course, like, it's a shorter length because it's a bit more of a modern tailor. He's done like the kind of like the wide waistband Gurkha style closure, hacking pocket, stuff like that. But it's like, okay, that's why I like that tailor, and it'd be cool to like to think about how to approach that kind of how to accomplish my personal style in a contemporary world, because I think also Spencer and I will know that we don't wear vintage all the time. We also realize that it's not easy, and we were also at the mercy of whatever is on eBay or the flea market, which is fine if you live in a colder climate, but not good if you're like us, live in LA and you can't wear sweaters and heavy tweed jackets and everything, and so, yeah, I mean, having a point of view in general just helps guide you with tailoring, with casual wear, even with milsurp, because like, here's a good example. I got a camo like shirt jacket early on. This was like 3 years ago, because I had seen a jungle jacket, but I had no idea what it was. And I was like, okay, cool. And I got like an 80s, 90s like BDU or something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's fine. I mean, I think our friend Andy like wears it. He still owns it. Still looks good over like a hopsack jacket. Looks good with like a turtleneck, whatever. But you know what the thing was? The slanted pockets, man. That's not, you know, the jungle jacket was just so different. And it's like, fuck, what is that shit? And you find out like, okay, here it goes. And then you look at it like now we're like, okay, yeah, J. Crew, yeah, Suit Supply, they might have a army field jacket, but it's not the jungle jacket. You know, it's just not that. And to find that detail, you either, you know, you got to buy the original or you search for like a Japanese brand that might have it. But then the thing is, if you know that, then you won't be bricked or you won't feel like, you know, that you wasted.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like if you go into fashion without any kind of point of view, you're just getting things recommended to you on Reddit, the Explore page, or like GQ or whatever. I feel like you're gonna have a lot of purchases where you buy it and you have a vague sense of not liking it, but you can't articulate why. And that seems horrible to me.
Well,
seems horrible.
That's the thing, because I think we've been asked this like on not just on the Discord, but like in our stream, but like, have you guys ever bricked your fits, or have you guys ever had like a lot of regret? And first off, it's gonna be like, well, we don't buy a lot because we don't have a lot of money. But number two, it's like we're so picky with like our point of view, you know, or it sounds like that, but that prevents us from, you know, not getting it, you know, like you know, a lot of us say, oh, why haven't you tried like engineered garments or 18Es? And we and I love those things. Those things are great, but there's always like something off about it that I'm just like, okay, like you know, engineered garments.
I mean, it's like the same thing where there's so much like, you know, there's so many styles that I can admire from afar and I think look cool, but I'm like, I wouldn't wear it. It's just not gonna work for me, or it's not gonna fit in with my wardrobe. It's like the same thing as that. You can have like admiration for something, but when there's, I don't know, like a kind of got a through line in your wardrobe, it's very easy to say, well, it looks cool, but it's not for me.
Yeah, and I think this is also why Spencer and I, what we talked about in the past, why we don't have like brand loyalty in a sense, because we're just guided purely by aesthetics, you know, purely by what we think fits in with our point of view, you know. Like there's a couple things like 18Es, like I said, like that has like I'm just trying to remember, it might be gone now because this episode's coming out way after recording time, but they had like a baseball shirt style, like you know, like it's a baseball like collarless like popover, but it was like a utility vest, you know. And it's like, I feel like I've seen like in the 30s or 40s something kind of close to that, or some kind of fun like really weird anorak kind of style thing. And part of me is like, I'd rather have the vintage one than that one because it's a little too modern, or just there's a couple stuff about it, you know. And if I was a regular guy, you know, who had more disposable income, I feel like I might have bought it because like, oh, you follow 18Es, you want to be there for when the drop happens. But then I feel like, okay, shit, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this kind of thing, you know. And something that we said about in the Money article, or even in our How We Buy Clothing essay, or podcast, I should say, is that when you buy vintage or secondhand, like the amount it takes out of your pocket is a lot smaller, you know.
Yeah.
And so like that's what's
like for a really really good vintage suit, like crazy rare thing, I mean, I don't know if the prices have changed, but back when we were into it, it was what, like $650-$700.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's what you would spend on like a suit from fucking J. Crew.
Yeah.
That's the other nice part about vintage.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, this whole thing is kind of like what I tell people to do, like early on, is to get a point of view, or at the very least get inspiration. Because if you don't have it, you are going to be that guy who is going to send us pictures of everything going, hey, is this a good suit? And it's about like, I'm not saying that we don't enjoy answering questions, but it's also about like training your eye to see the details so that way you don't mess up.
And I mean, I think we've talked about this, I'm sure, at least on the podcast or the stream, but it's like, you know, as people who are interested in fashion, of course, we've gotten a friend of a friend or like an acquaintance come up to us and say, I want to look good, or I want to dress better, like help me. And then it's like, that's like, where do you go from there? Yeah,
I always say like, what does that mean to you? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like tell me what you like. It's like someone says, hey, recommend me some good music. I'm like, okay, do you like jazz? Do you like do you
Yeah.
like indie music? Do you like what do you like? Do you want top 40? Do you want pop music? Like, I don't know.
It's like one time I went on a date at a coffee shop and my date was a little bit late. And she said, "You can go ahead and like order for me." And I said, "Oh yeah, cool. What do you want?" She's like, "Surprise me." And I'm like, "Are you in the mood for food or coffee?" And she's like, "No, just get what do you think I want." I'm like, "Sorry."
I think we need more Spencer dating content on the.
Like I can't. It was too stressful a decision to make.
That's crazy. But the thing is, like,
Yeah.
looking back, we're doing this podcast. No one asked us to do it, but I mean,
You asked us not to do it.
but I mean, it's like no one's saying that we're wrong here, but I think that we should absolutely emphasize having a taste, because I think you have a taste in everything. Like, you don't,
Yeah.
you need at the very least a grocery list when you go to Costco. Like, you're not gonna go, what's new at Costco? Like, they got these new graham crackers.
What's
what
the
if
new food?
like what if you don't like graham crackers? You're not buying it. Like, you're gonna go home and your wife goes, "Here, honey, here, I got the Costco," and your wife goes, "You forgot I'm allergic to graham crackers," or something. But it's like, like, you have a radio station, you have a Spotify with these tastes in
It's
there.
like, yeah, even if you don't know it or you don't think you have a preference, like you do. Like everyone, I don't know, like there are people that are like, "Oh, I don't care how I look." Like the guy that we were making fun of in the Discord today who like commented, it's like, "The only time I buy new clothes is when my old clothes become too ripped and stained for wear." It's like, I'm sure that you still have like a shirt that you're like, "Oh, I look good in this shirt. I like this shirt a lot."
you have,
like
you
everybody
have to
has
do it.
that.
Everyone has taste, and I think it's, hopefully two things. I hope two things happen when people listen to this episode, if they find it wherever it is. The nuclear war has happened. They find the old tapes, because we record these on tape, actually.
We do.
Yeah, yeah.
Convert it to digital afterwards.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah.
This is why we do it so far in advance. But it's like, I hope, number one, I hope that you guys find out whatever taste that is for you. But number two, that a regular person understands that, classic menswear or tailoring is not a monolith, right? There is so much out there. Well, yeah, we are not a
Yeah.
monolith.
You're not a monolith.
Yeah, but I mean, it's because I think, like you said, most people, when they look at tailoring suits or even like vintage or whatever, they're like, "Oh, that guy just looks good, he's wearing a suit." But like, there's so much in there that make it different, and you should embrace that and think about it that way, because again, otherwise you're just kind of gonna be kind of stuck into this kind of limbo of potentially being bricked, And
Yeah.
that's not to say that Spencer and I haven't bought something and then all of a sudden later on we're like, I'm good. I should get rid of this, But we try and minimize that, But
You
yeah,
want to spend the last like 15 minutes just going through
let's do it. Yeah.
things that we
So
like.
again, this is stuff that it's kind of related to the deal breaker thing, but it's also just like how our eye works. It affects how we approach menswear and what we deem as, quote, good. And again, that I'm sure all just is cringing in his grave. He's not dead. he just sleeps. He just sleeps in graves. But good is a strong word, but what we like, I guess,
Yeah,
it's not
what we look for in our purchases.
Yeah, because again, I want to be different, even though again I'm not as like experimental, but don't want to be like the regular guy wearing an H&M suit or just wearing like a blue suit. It's about like what kind of blue suit that you're wearing, and again, it also affects what brands we look at and what brands we follow, and because we're not like some of the influencers who just are always on Natalino and looking at all the other Spear McKay drops. Like, it's about very specific things, and yeah. So let's go through it. So obviously, number one, higher waist pants. Like, that's like a number one thing.
That's the number one thing.
I've written about this like a long time, like 2015. One of the first articles is like why you should have high waisted pants. I don't really do the why you should articles anymore, but it was like, I remember my friends were like, "That's crazy! Like, that's like, why are your pants so high? Also, why do you have a camel toe?" I'm like, just because my pants are high doesn't mean it's like like suffocating my crotch, But
I can't, like, low-waisted pants are uncomfortable, and so many people say it's like, "Oh, I can't wear high-waisted pants. They're so uncomfortable." And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's just because I'm used to it because I've been wearing them since high school, probably. it just makes sense to me. That's where pants should go.
Yeah, like I think even before when I would wear like I kept pulling them up because it just felt weird. You know, even if they were like an 8-inch rise, you know, from like Hot Topic, it's like no, you gotta pull it up, you know. So every time we look at like anything, jeans, work pants, chinos, trousers, even if they were bespoke, like even for me when I went to Indochino, it's like, hey, can you make a high-waisted pant? Like I'm not gonna buy this unless you can do it, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of a big thing. And you know what goes with that? Short casual jackets. I know we've talked about this repeatedly before, but you know, you look at old pictures again, all the stuff that we've seen. Doesn't matter if it's a denim jacket, leather jacket. It all like ends slightly past the waistband, but around your natural waist, and that was kind of.
And this ties into just like most casual garments. Again, like knitwear, sweater, like you know, sweaters, like hoodies, whatever. All had it was once again just bringing back that word harmonious. It just ended where the pants ended.
That's right. But it's like, you know, like people say, "Oh, have you guys bought a lot of like Uniqlo sweaters?" And we're like, not really, because they're all too long.
Yeah.
I mean, I own some because sometimes I just like it, and also not many places do the knitwear, and Rubato has like 3 colors, you know. Hey, Oliver, if you're listening to this, come on, man, make some other colors. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, knitwear is one of those things where we have had to compromise just because.
That's
like,
true. Yeah.
I know vintage knitwear is harder to find.
Not just in like an LA appropriate like fabric, because I mean I have like a wool sweater that's like pretty open weave, that's fine, but also like in good condition.
I have my McGregor, like my favorite sweater is my 50s McGregor, which unfortunately, again, despite, I mean, it was in my storage drawer for a year, and it's the only thing that has moth holes in there. Those moths attacked specifically that sweater. I mean, it's only one moth hole, but it's right on the neck, like right underneath the neck, so it's very noticeable, which is annoying.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I wish more places made like vintage style knitwear. Again, Rubato's cool. Not gonna really wear lamb's wool where we are. But yeah, I mean, hey, but that's why we also like North Star Sea Clothing or whatever, like that one, or you know.
But yeah, going back, it's like, yeah, most of my casual jackets are vintage because of this. Like all my leather jackets are vintage. Most of my like work jackets are vintage. Just because, yeah, you can't. Everything else is too long.
Yeah. On this kind of thing, we can talk about drape, or at the very least, wider legged pants. Spencer and I mean, we have like a lot of like Ralph Lauren. And Spencer wears like a lot of reproduction military stuff, but for me, who wears tailoring, it's like, oh, I hate to bring it up. I mean, Natalino is cool. I'm not gonna say they're wrong, but like for me, it's like they're just too slim. Like they're, and it's like, oh well, you know, they're like the new brand. Why don't you try? I'm like, I can't do it. Like, I mean, if they could change it, I would. And maybe nowadays, like I've experimented a little bit more. I obviously have like a Spear McKay suit, which is not a 10-inch opening, but like it's, you know, it's like 8.5 or close to 9, but it's still fine. I have some compromises or caveats to it, but in general, it's like, you know, why I didn't like buying suits from Suit Supply. It just was too long, you know. Oh, sorry, too slim. Too slim, yeah. Too small.
Yeah. Too small.
But one, like, I mean, hey, this is just like a shower epiphany moment, but like I think that might be one reason why I always preferred wearing separates, because I was able to like wear like a Suit Supply jacket with like a wide lapel is like okay, even though it's not 3-roll 2 or whatever. Wear that with like Ralph Lauren like odd trousers, it's fine. But then wearing like a Ralph Lauren suit might not work because polo suits tend to have low buttoning, and wearing a Suit Supply suit might be too slim. So that might be why, like, for a long time, until like Atelier Fugue and Ascot Chang and Spear McKay, I would wear separates like almost all the time. But yeah, I mean, drape is so important, you know.
I mean, this is getting back to vintage, like just the fabric, which is what I really like. But I mean, really nothing has drape like a pair of like vintage like pants. Just the weight of the fabric, the cuffs, the fit, it just all hangs so clean and so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that one might not be like a like buying guide, but like when we look at outfits that are like, oh, that guy looks good or bad or just at least to our liking, oh, that guy's working suit with good drape, you know. And I think that like that's kind of like what it is. Like it doesn't matter if the trousers aren't like accenting his hips in the way, or the waist is nipped on the jacket. You know, it's about like it's about drape. And you look at like, you know, for me, I'm always making these connections to like not just illustrations, but like pictures of like Jimmy Stewart or regular guys wearing suits. Like, okay, they look good for that reason, the drape. So I'm gonna look at other people and say, okay, they look good because of the drape too. You know, we talked a little bit about ties, like how, you know, ties that are too long is kind of what's happening now because.
Well, yeah, this is a consequence of pants becoming lower. Is ties got longer because if you wanted to hit the waistband, you can't do that with a shorter tie. But that makes it difficult for us to wear ties since we like high-rise pants because now ties are too long.
Yeah, I mean, I just tuck it in because I like that look, you know. But then there's a whole thing of like, for a while, it's like, why don't you buy, okay, let me go back. So let's talk about like the patterns and the abstract ones because that's probably more specific to us as opposed to like tie constructions. Because I think nowadays a lot of guys are making like untipped edges. Even like Van Define clothing, Drake's does it. Kabuchi does it, but
and I mean that's a big deal because as we've talked about before, the like, you know, what do you get at a department store or menswear house or almost any place that has the thick inner lining? You can't get the nice, like, you know, tight foreign hand on.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, luckily now with the rise of like more classic or the popularization of it, it's a bit more common. Like I think even Chase of the Grange is starting to make his own line of ties, which have a cool, very light interlining and the untipped edges or the machine rolled edges. But let's talk about patterns. And I've written about this before, but like there's just a way that fucking like vintage Fuller's look or soft squares, geometric shapes, they just have like this spacing that is not as uniform as like a Macclesfield or traditional like Fuller ties from like the 80s or 90s. You know, it's a bit more fun. They're like spaced out.
Because yeah, like the Fuller ties that you think of from like the 80s, they're all like on a grid or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of. Vintage ties, it's not the case. It's like a lot more kind of spread out and like random.
Yeah, and then even then like the fun ties, like I mean you can think of like even like paisley ties have been like kind of different over the years, you know, and this and I mean that's kind of it, right? Like ties have changed designs over the years, even like the size of rep stripes. I mean, talk about the Grange, you know, there's he says that he prefers like the kind of 70s 80s, and I was looking at it, and no offense to Chase, but like there's one that's like just too thin of a rep stripe. Like I prefer bigger block stripes, you know, as opposed to like the kind of thin 70s kind of stripe to it. And that's kind of like a 30s thing that I'm into, or like a 60s thing, you know. And that,
I mean,
that
you wrote that like great article about vintage ties that has all those photos of like
actual vintage ties,
the stuff that, you know, Cody had or Damien had.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like the colors that you see on those like 1930s stripe ties, there's like Drake's does, you know, some stuff like it or whatever.
Yeah.
But like all the beautiful, like, I don't know. It's hard to think of like one example, but a lot of really cool like oranges and pastels and stuff like that you just don't really see anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's why, like, again, like, we don't have to try out a bunch of different tie makers. Like we don't go to the tie bar, or I guess nowadays, like we do get asked, oh, why don't you buy from like Tie or Tie Florence for stuff? With what money? Or like, oh, why don't you try?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like vintage ties are like $15-$20.
Yeah.
That's what I've spent on most of my ties.
Yeah, exactly. Same. But I was gonna say like people always, like, a lot of people wear Van Define clothing. I mean that's like a good tie maker that the Anthology uses, you know, all that kind of stuff. But they do like stripes. They don't do like foulards, and if they do it, they're just not the same way. So it's easy for me to like avoid the problem. I don't have to try it out. And you guys know I don't do reviews. I wear what I wear. So that kind of helped. Here's some other quick ones that we can get through. I mean, like belt backs are cool. You know, that's one thing. But a lot of people do them now. You know, like you've seen like the shooting jackets or whatever.
Yeah.
But we still look at them and be like, well, they're not exactly the 30s way.
Because it's like, people are making like, I don't know. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like people are making like a bi-swing jacket or one that has like a big box pleat in the center. But like the really cool stuff that you saw in the 30s, like the shark gill back, which it's like just a big series. It looks like a pleated tuxedo shirt. It's like, obviously a little bit wider, but just like a big series of pleats, or like Western yokes or stuff like that, or little micro pleats gathered on the belt. Those are the things that make us go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and even then when they do them nowadays, like the belt's always like too wide, like vertically, you know what I mean? They're just not right, and we have these conversations, and this is not just like a small obsession, because sometimes when you have the ability to get something made for yourself, knowing these details and having a point of view will help guide that. Like our friend Andy came to us, and he still got a great suit out of it. It's not that big of a deal, but he got it, and the belt was just made a little bit too narrow. Like it doesn't like kind of fully expand across. Like I think like a traditional belt back. Like I think like the back will hit seam to seam on the back. I think it'll go fully across, but his did not.
Yeah.
And so, but it's just something that you learn, that you kind of figure out, and you try and communicate to your tailor and everything. We have to talk about lapels again, like blunted lower gorge, because there are a couple times when when people ask us, do you like J Muser? I think they make cool stuff, but the house style of the Campania jacket for the ready to wear, like the lapel, like the gorge is a little too high. Excuse me. For me, it's just like, when it's too high, it doesn't really, it's not harmonious to me for the shoulders.
It just looks like it looks more balanced. Like,
when it's
again,
lower,
not to be like, oh, the vintage one is good, but it does look a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, it doesn't have this kind of like eyes going upward thing, and maybe I don't know where you guys looking at.
I really don't like it. I mean, you don't really see this as much like anymore, I don't think. Yeah. Maybe with like brands like Suit Supply or whatever, but I hate seeing the super wide lapel jackets with the super high gorge that's just like flying off your shoulder.
Yeah, when it's literally on your shoulder, that's so weird to me.
It doesn't look good. I think it just doesn't look good. It doesn't draw the eye to the right places.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, maybe we're just I like it widening the chest a little bit, but that could just be me. Again, modern. Hey, if casual jackets are too long, modern overcoats are just too short, and that's right. That's not really. I mean, that could be a 30s thing. I don't know when overcoats started getting shorter. That's probably like a more.
I mean, I think
thing.
It's because like people started like driving cars more, and so if you're sitting down in like a knee length coat or whatever, that's going to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I always like looking at like bigger coats. There's like a good big coat album on MFA, but. Yeah, like to me, like it helps. The 30s and 40s are good. I'm sure even 70s and 80s, maybe not 70s because of the polyester, but like 80s, 90s coats, I'm sure are fine. One other thing, shirt collars too small. It's kind of yeah.
As we've talked about that a lot. We had a whole episode about the spear point.
Yeah, right? That's right. But even, I mean, we're gonna have one on the OCBD this year because it's been asked of us and asked of me to write about OCBDs. But like that's also kind of, we talked about this kind of recently, where what makes a good OCBD, and we can get into that later in that episode. But like,
I mean, yeah, that's gonna be a topic of debate, I think.
Yeah, because even for me, like
everyone has a different definition.
Even illustrations in the 30s, like some of them don't have roll. Like they have a very, like they vary in like how much roll they have. I've seen like pure vintage.
I mean, there's a whole section of Ametora where they talk about all the varieties of OCBDs that exist, and they said it's like, yeah, there were some with like very short collars and some with collars so long they had to have like special boxes or whatever when they shipped them out, shit like that.
Yeah.
So there's always been a big variety.
Yeah, and that's what guides us on like, okay, why do we like the Drake's OCBD? What makes that better than like the Anglo-Italian one, or why is Jake's London so good? And having those conversations, again, having a point of view, especially to us, where like I buy a lot of like 60s, 70s OCBDs that I find on eBay, or 80s stuff. It's in pursuit of whatever aesthetic that is. That's not exactly 30s, but it's still having that point of view that will guide it.
We want to talk about like breast pockets really quick, because I feel like that's something that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Is breast pockets are usually too high.
You're talking about on jackets, right? Yeah.
On jackets, yeah.
Yeah, most places. It's usually not seen on like bespoke stuff, but most like like mid-price, made to measure, like Spear and McKay. Even I'm sorry, our friend David Atelier Fugue, even he admits that his breast patch pocket was priced a little too high. And even Andy's breast pocket on his bespoke suit, because it's something.
Oh well, I mean, just talking. Yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, I think people
I'll
don't really
transition into patch pockets after this.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say people don't really think about like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But because you're looking at like the 30s for like from our point of view, the breast pocket was like literally like at nipple height. Like it wasn't placed high on the chest.
It was at your breast.
It was at literally your breast. Yeah. But go ahead about the patch pockets.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, that's the other thing, is like patch pockets, and I mean pockets on a lot of things, like shirts, like modern fashion military jackets, work jackets, whatever. Pockets are too small. I'm a person that likes carrying a lot of things with me. I like having big pockets, and vintage clothing has spoiled me, because the suits usually had, especially if they were patch pocket, had fucking big honkin' pockets. Vintage, like, vintage casual shirts or vintage, work shirts, whatever. They also have just gigantic pockets, which no one's doing anymore. And I say we got to reclaim our pocket space.
Absolutely.
We got to take that back.
I mean, it makes most sense practically, right? Like just putting your fucking fists in there. The good thing I like about modern ones, because like 30s and 40s jackets don't have vents, so putting your fists in those pockets kind of feels weird, like it's a little too close to the body.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, sometimes you gotta evolve, And one other last thing before we get to like what some brands that we think kind of fit our aesthetic, and it's probably not gonna be a surprise to you guys, but in terms of materials, right? We talk about drape, man. I mean, wool gabardine, vintage wool gabardine is like awesome. Like I have one gray wool gab suit. I'm sure Spencer has had like gab jackets, and they are it's kind of like a bold look 40s 50s thing, but like in terms of material, it's so good. Like it's
got like such a great finish to it.
Yeah, it's like got a slight sheen on it. The twill is good. Usually the color is like on gray or brown. It's kind of got like it's kind of got a sheen, but it's still more matte also as well.
It's usually a little bit like dustier too, the colors.
Yeah, that might be why we like corduroy a lot, because it kind of has a kind of like a similar quality in that regard at least. But yeah, like we'll get like those gray trousers I wore for the wide-legged article. So good. I wish I had more pants like that, because those really do go with everything. And even in the heat, when it's hot, yeah, you're still wearing wool. Yeah, it's a little bit heavier, but the airflow from the drape is so much better than having it like cling to you or be cut too close to your body, And on that note, rayon gab needs to fucking come back, because everyone always says
it's like the greatest shirt fabric.
Yeah, I swear to God, like I all my shirts should be made of like a vintage Oxford that's been like washed like 10 times, and I want everything to be a rayon gab that's been washed like 10 times,
Yeah.
Because obviously we've seen the rise of like the Aloha shirt and the camp collar shirt, but I hated that they were made in like poplin, like broadcloth or whatever. Linen's like okay, but sometimes they do like silk rayon, or well, rayon is silk in the sense, but it was always like super delicate. It was almost like a brocadey like tie kind of. Well, I don't know if anyone knows brocade.
Like very thin, but like the old like rayon gab shirts that we like. I mean, they're not like heavy, but they're like heftier. They have like a little bit of spring to it.
There's like natural stretch to it. The drape that you get when you tuck it in, and you like
it ages, it like breaks in and gets like so good when it's it's great. There's a lot of like sport shirts and old Western shirts that were made out of rayon gab in like the 30s and 40s, and just waiting for someone to figure out that fabric formulation.
Yeah. Well,
like bring back.
I was gonna say the only things that I've seen do it are like two palms, which is fine, but again, the short collar, so it kind of depends where your compromises lie, or like Japanese reproduction ones. I think Spencer and I have had like vintage Aloha shirts, or not, secondhand Aloha shirts that we've gotten from like Second Street. That are pretty close. They're still a little bit thinner, but they are pretty, like they're the closest that I've seen that get to that kind of kind of look. You know, it's
And then we both have the Groove and Vintage shirts too.
yeah, which are
pretty good.
also pretty close. Still a little bit on the thinner modern side, a little bit slimmer fit.
Yeah.
But it's still again in that vein. You know, and again you could talk about like the designs on vintage Aloha shirts because like those flower patterns are way cooler than like modern ones. Maybe not two palms, but like you're thinking of like 80s.
I mean, I was gonna
ones.
say like your like Rayon Gab Western shirt.
Oh yeah.
That I love that thing because it's like I love, you know, obviously I love the Rayon Gab Aloha shirts and sport shirts, but I also love the non like camp collar.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, like I said, it just breaks in really well, and I think it just looks cool. There's something about it that just like it's a cool guy look.
Yeah.
Wearing like
it's
a
great.
Rayon
I have
Gab Western shirt.
2 Rayon Gab Western shirts, and those are really good. And that again, that if you talk about like point of view, like that guides our casual shirt buying. You know, like that's we see a lot of Western shirts. Moleskin's cool, but it's like it's not Rayon Gab, man. Not gonna be into it. Not gonna be into the Wythe. So unfortunate for that. But yeah, let's finish off here. Obviously, we like to buy originals as much as possible. You know, we still think that if you have a point of view, it doesn't really matter if you incorporate it into your everyday look because now it's like your look. Because it's not about like doing a costume, or maybe it is kind of. You know, you could argue that, but when it's like your look, it kind of doesn't really matter what you buy. It just matters what you decided to buy, like what actually made the cut. And talking about brands who get it, I mean, obviously. I think Ring Jacket kind of has a very look that I kind of like. That being said, I'm sure that there are plenty of other makers out there. Like I mean, Drake. I've tried on Drake's jacket tailoring. Don't own it, but I've tried on jacket. I mean, that's pretty cool to me. 3-roll 2, soft, good drape. But I definitely think Ring Jacket via the Armory, like the Model 3 or whatever their stuff is pretty good. And speaking of that, like, you know, when they unveiled like the Model 100 series in '99, their work suit, their Ivy inspired work suit, like we were like discussing like, oh, that looks like a 60s a 60s sack jacket, but with like workwear pockets, you know. Or like the 99 from Taylor Cade that they do for the bespoke is like, oh, that looks like a 70s sack jacket, or, you know, like a later era sack jacket. And then like when we were looking at the Model 101, which is like their new structured shoulder one, like kind of like more plain, more, you know, for business people, like that looked kind of like, this not be vintage, but it looks like Italian. It looks like, you know, Northern Italian Milanese kind of style. And that's what they're going for, you know?
Yeah.
I do remember, speaking of Ring Jacket and Taylor Cade and everything, when I met Yamamoto-san, he was showing me his different pieces. And one of them was like a 70s or a modern sack jacket that was kind of 70s and 30s at the same time. And it looked... And to me and Spencer, most tailoring nowadays looks like 70s does 30s. Well, 2010s does all those things because, like, yeah, the lapels are wider. I think a lot more tailors are doing a little bit of a lower gorge now. There's like, you know, there's a little bit of a nipped waist, so kind of 70s. Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff kind of going on, and we're able to see that kind of stuff. You know, just like when we see Trattoria del Cuore, from Bryceland's, you can see like they are clearly looking at like 30s stuff a little bit, you know.
And I mean, yeah, that like the like belt back sport coat that they've made for Ethan Kenji. That's like, I've said that before. That's like one of my favorite modern sport coats. Like, if I could, I would like have like a million jackets in that cut.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, like seeing the tailors, I kind of get it. I mean, that's why we look at those guys and why we might not look at others. Like B and Taylor, I think one of the first tailoring firms that I've ever seen. Like I remember showing Spencer, like look like these pants, like they're kind of wide, they're high-waisted, they're pleated. Like Chad Park, like what, like their combination of like a different Italian styles together, it looks so good. And their DB, I think, is like one of the best DBs I've seen. Like he gets the wide set buttons like perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know why I would look anywhere else, because if that's what I would want to wear, like that's kind of it. And I'm very lucky to have been able to wear Chad's jacket when I visited Sartor Ginza in Japan. But in terms of like, hey, you know, workwear stuff, I mean, Double RL obviously.
I was gonna say, like, what I like about Double RL is they don't do a whole lot of like straight reproductions. They do a lot of like interpretations of things.
Yeah.
But they always, I don't know, they always kind of maintain like what's cool about the original. I've never like. Or they'll just take an original pattern and make it in a new, interesting fabric.
Yeah.
So they're keeping all the things. It's not like, oh, we're gonna take this jacket, but we're gonna make the pocket smaller, or we're gonna make it longer, or whatever. They're taking the essence of the original and just kind of changing it a little bit, which is I think is really cool.
And that's how Spencer and I are able to like experiment, because a lot of this stuff sometimes it is like like a tie. It's kind of hard to like. I mean, not all Drake's ties look 30s and 40s. But say if you're able to copy a World War II chino fit, but put it in like fucking Madras or something, like that's cool. And that's how we would get into Madras, because otherwise we'd have to get like a 60s cut, which might be a little bit too slim. I don't really like flat front pants or whatever. And then modern ones, I mean, I wouldn't really wear a modern Madras pant because it's just low rise, not pleated, whatever. So like that's what's kind of cool about that. Same thing with like Bronson, but even though Bronson's a little bit more of a straightforward reproduction.
Yeah, it's like all the like reproduction brand, like Bronson, Real McCoy's, like whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's the same thing where they see what's cool about the original. They try not to mess with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the important details: fit, closure, rise. I mean, lots of Bryson stuff is kind of like that. Like putting a Westerner in like a Madras style cotton or whatever is kind of cool. Keeping the long collar points, the wide width, or the wider fit and everything. Doing fun like rayon gap shirt and whatever like fucking weird fabric that they find, like the surfer novelty shirt or something. That's kind of cool. Or from a straightforward perspective, like Kariwelama is able to kind of do like a 40s or a 30s style hat, but then do it in like, oh, I've always wanted it in like dark navy blue, which you might not be able to find. Yeah. I think that's what's really cool about it. And then some like a new brand that I was like, not really new, but LEJ, who has made the work shirts for Drake's, I think he kind of gets it, where he's able to kind of like update like.
Those have good pockets.
Yeah. I was gonna bring it up earlier. Giant pockets, perfect. Like they look like the ones like my Boy Scout shirts, like really big, pleated with like the yoke on like the flap and the cat eye buttons. Like good spear point collar, or at least a faux spear point collar, because it's kind of a little bit 70s, not really the curve, but it's like in that vein, and like that's what's really cool. I think that like when people have asked me like, oh, do you like the work shirt from, I don't know, like Spear McKay or like the work shirts from like Jay Muse, I'm like, well, the collar's not quite there or whatever, but that's in essence, that's what it comes down to, having that inherent point of view that help guide you, right? And maybe that's the joy of getting custom made clothing. Obviously, Spencer and I don't have a lot of experience with that so far. I'm sure this year we'll talk about the ones that we do have, because we've been asked also what our experience is. Like, I'm sure they would want to know how Spencer does proper cloth like 2 years ago and all that kind of shit. But this is why we're that picky. When people ask, hopefully when people listen to this, people will say like, oh, that's why Ethan doesn't just fucking try every online internet brand, right? Like, that's first, again, I just don't have the money or the fucking mental bandwidth to deal with that kind of shit, But yeah, overall, guys, try and have a point of view, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be 30s, 40s. Obviously,
No, absolutely.
I don't recommend it, because it makes you, it might not work out for you. But like, like thinking like, oh, would Ralph Lauren wear this or design this? And thinking stuff in that vein. It could even work for like style moves, right? Where like, I might not. Actually, trying to think of a style move that I haven't tried yet. I was gonna say wear like black jeans with a sport coat, but I've done that because like you think of it like, oh, that seems kind of like an RL kind of thing. It also seems kind of like an SLP kind of thing, right? You have that point of view, and you bring that into your own aesthetic, and you try it out that way.
Oh, it also really quick. I wanna say that this is not like, I still like really, I still wear and buy a lot of vintage stuff with my casual wear. But I'm not going for. There's a difference between wearing vintage and going for period accurate looks. Yeah. Which is maybe what we should have said earlier. But for example, and I've talked about this on the stream, but I have a Browns Beach vest that I've been wearing a lot recently, and I'm not wearing it how a worker would wear it in the 1930s. I'm wearing it and just thinking about it as like a layering piece, as like a puffer vest or whatever. Yeah. And so I'm taking this vintage piece, but I'm not wearing it in a vintage way.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, same. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like a similar thing for me, but it's like, it's all about creating that kind of personal look, and like for me, I don't have to wear a 30s jacket to wear spear point collars, and that's also number one why I'm always wearing spear point collars, because that's something that is so important to me, and finding shirts that work with that. Like that's why I don't buy Drake's shirts unless they're like the what was it, like the long point collar or
long point,
yeah,
long point collar,
or why certain chambray shirts I just don't buy because they don't have it like the 30s style spear point or like the USN chambray. But yeah, it's about looking at that and like again recontextualizing it for whatever it means to you, because thankfully, again, like Spencer said, we are not doing period accuracy now. That is not what our thing is. It might guide it a little bit in terms of the choices and fit, but having that point of view is what sets us apart from other people. It also sets us.
And I mean, this is also partially going back to the thing that you've talked about with the button pocket harmony of you don't want a garment just to look good on you. You want it to look good like by itself.
Yeah.
And so that's another one of the things I think is we can just like look at a casual jacket without trying it on, say that's too long,
too small.
Yeah,
I think and getting to that point again will help you. That's how we're so good about looking at it on eBay. Like people how are you guys able to look at this stuff without narrow search terms? It's because we just look at one picture, like nope, that's not it. It's like Tinder. There's a highlight. It's like Tinder for clothes. Swipe yes, swipe no. And buy.
You got to make that app.
Yeah.
It just shows you a piece of clothing and then you swipe yes and you buy it automatically.
And you fuck it.
Charges your card. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna fuck this book. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and you find it useful. I'm sure that the discussion this Saturday on the stream. I'm saying that knowingly, even though today is not a day where we're doing this particular topic, but it is for you because you're listening to it at press time. I'm sure the stream will be a great discussion because I know that our friends will have a lot of I don't know about strong opinions.
I mean, because we have a different point of view than most of our friends and almost all people.
Yeah, we're weird.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so be sure
it's gonna be. Yeah, I'm gonna be interested to hear how everyone else who does not have the same brain worms from buying 80-year-old clothes.
Yeah, having it be like that's not 30s enough, and they go, why does it matter? And I'm like, I don't know. It just
I like sometimes whenever we talk about like in the Discord, like one of us, like Yumi or Andy or Ivan, will be talking about like a new collection and then start referencing like 1920s European menswear. I'm like, no one else fucking talks like this. Like we're weird.
Yeah. I think that's what the big thing is between us and like regular vintage people, is because I think everyone, it works on the flip side where they are automatically they're just so dismissive of modern clothing. But for us, we can actually give credit to where credit is due. We're like, oh, they are pulling this, and that's why we like it. That's why this looks good.
Yeah.
I think that's also one reason why I got into buying or getting into more classic or contemporary menswear, because I wasn't convinced that vintage was all the only way to go. There's got to be like kind of a fun middle ground that exists, and if it doesn't exist in ready to wear, it probably exists more with like bespoke tailoring. But anyway, guys, check out our stream this Saturday. We'll do it twitch.tv/downdirection, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We also stream on Wednesdays, our casual gaming stream, where we don't talk to you, but you can watch us play video games.
I mean, we'll talk to you if you we will talk to you.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Please come watch and give us stuff to talk about, and we'll talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to contribute and support the pod, you can go to patreon.com/styleanddirection. $5 a month will get you access to our exclusive Discord. It's a lot of fun in there. Again, it's not like it's a fun benefit, but it just helps us continue doing this. Also helps us compensate a couple of the costs, as well as give something to our faithful producers Matt and MJ. Don't get on mic. And if you do $10, you'll be a Sadcast fanatic, of which I will say your name, and those names are thank you to Seth Peterson, Eric Hall, Austin Malat, Shane Curry, Philip Regard, and Audrey Jessica. And if you can't give us money, or if you just refuse to, but you still like us, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
That might as well be $5 in our pocket.
Yeah, except we can't pay the rent with it. or the hosting.
But do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 5 stars anywhere that you guys, obviously if you have an Android, do it 5 stars on whatever app platform you're using. But if you have an iPhone, please put 5 stars on that Apple Podcasts one.
Yep.
That's it. We will see you in 2 weeks for the next episode. There should be a bonus episode too. Either comes out before this or after. Not sure what the schedule is. It's getting kind of late. We're recording this on a weekday, on a work day.
That's right. We both got school tomorrow.
Oh man, did I tell you I had a dream where I got like, I had to take a test. Number 1, I was like, I didn't study. And number 2, I'm not in fucking school, bro. Why am I taking a test?
So you knew that you weren't in school, but you were like, I gotta take this test.
That's like, because one of those things, how Inception has taught us that the dream world stretches out time. So like, as I was making that thought, like I was slowly breaking, like the water was coming down, like it was breaking out of the dream, but yeah, that was a weird one.
And then you woke up and said, it's like, I gotta forgive my dad or whatever.
Yeah, I gotta break up my dad's company, but because he loves me and he wants me to be my own person. I was gonna talk about another dream I had, but I'll tell you about it off mic. It's fucking crazy, bro.
Okay, can't wait.
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Ethan M. Wong.
I'm Spencer DSO.
Don't forget to follow the Instagram at Style Direction, all spelled out. We'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Bye bye.